You made a mistake years ago, and somewhere deep in the architecture of your mind, you decided that you must pay the penalty for the rest of your life. You believe in karma, that iron, unforgiving rule of cause and effect that chains every action to a consequence, every sin to a sentence. You have accepted this rule as absolute law, as unbreakable as gravity, as permanent as stone. But Emmet Fox, one of the most precise and penetrating metaphysical thinkers who ever lived, revealed something that the majority of humanity has never been told. He revealed a higher law, a hidden mechanism built into the very fabric of the universe that supersedes karma entirely. It is not magic, it is not sentiment. It is a cosmic loophole of staggering precision, and it is called the law of forgiveness. In the realm of mind, forgiveness is not a religious pleasantry exchanged between wounded people at a Sunday service. It is a brutal, mechanical, and utterly final cancellation decree. When you hold guilt for a mistake you made, or resentment for a wound someone else inflicted, you are not simply feeling an emotion. You are keeping the energetic contract of that mistake alive, feeding it with your attention, your fear, and your belief. The moment you execute the cancellation decree with precision and authority, you sever the psychic wire that connects your present to that past event. The consequence is aborted. The debt does not have to be paid in suffering. It simply has to be cancelled. Consider for a moment the precise weight of what you are carrying. Not a metaphorical weight, a literal, measurable, energetic burden that you strap onto your back every single morning before you even open your eyes. It is the backpack of regret, and it is filled with every mistake you have catalogued, every failure you have archived, every moment where you believed you were less than what the universe required of you. This weight does not stay in the past where it belongs. It travels with you into every new opportunity, every new relationship, every new venture. It arrives before you do. And when a moment of genuine success begins to materialize in your life, this subconscious voice, the voice of the self-appointed warden, whispers with cold authority, "You do not deserve this, not after what you did." And the success dissolves, not because the universe punished you, because you punished yourself. And the universe, being a perfect mirror of your inner decree, simply reflected your judgment back as outer circumstance. Here is the precise diagnosis that Emmet Fox issues with the clarity of a surgeon reading an X-ray. You are serving a life sentence in a prison where the door is wide open. The bars are not iron, they are mental. They are constructed entirely from the recycled material of your own guilt and resentment, stacked and reinforced every time you replay the memory, every time you rehearse the offense, every time you update the mental ledger of what was done to you or what you did to another. The warden of this prison is not God. It is not karma. It is not the person who wronged you. The warden is you, specifically a version of you that has confused suffering with penance, that has mistaken self-punishment for spiritual integrity. Fox makes this diagnosis without sentimentality, because sentimentality here is a luxury that costs you your life. Fox's promise, however, is equally precise and equally without sentimentality. He does not offer comfort. He offers a mechanism. If you invoke this specific mental instrument, if you operate it correctly with the full authority of your understanding, you do not merely reduce the weight of the past. You wipe the slate entirely, completely, and permanently clean. This is not hyperbole. This is the logical consequence of understanding how the universal law actually operates. The universe, as Fox taught with relentless consistency, has no memory of its own. It does not keep a ledger in some celestial courthouse. It possesses no filing cabinet of your transgressions. It operates only in the present moment, and the only record of your past that has any power is the record that you yourself maintain in the archive of your own consciousness. Erase the mental record, execute the cancellation decree with genuine authority, and the physical punishment that was generated by that record has no more source from which to draw its power. The consequence vanishes because the cause has been dissolved. In this video, you and I are going to execute what I will call the severance protocol. This is not a motivational exercise. This is not an affirmation to be repeated passively while you wait for feelings to change. This is a step-by-step operational procedure, a legally binding decree in the language of universal law, that erases your past mistakes from the universal ledger with the same precision and finality that a court order erases a debt. We will examine the physics of why resentment and guilt function as psychic chains. We will understand the exact mechanism by which the cancellation decree severs those chains at their root. We will walk through the protocol step by step, and we will examine the scientific confirmation that modern neuroscience now provides for what Fox understood metaphysically nearly a century ago. This is not a lecture about being a better person. This is an instruction manual for dismantling the architecture of your own imprisonment. But before we proceed, I must warn you. There is a counterfeit version of this process circulating in spiritual communities, in self-help culture, and in the well-meaning advice of friends and therapists. I call it the martyr's pardon. It wears the mask of forgiveness, it uses the language of forgiveness, and it produces the feeling of moral superiority that many people confuse with genuine release. But Fox identified it as a complete fraud, worse than no forgiveness at all, because it creates the illusion of having executed the decree while secretly doubling the karmic damage. I will expose this toxic pattern in precise detail in part 4 of this video. What it reveals about the ego's desperate need to remain a victim will be deeply uncomfortable. Pay close attention when we arrive there. Right now, before we go any further, I want you to do one thing. In the comments below this video, write the words, "I cancel the debt." Not as a casual interaction, write it as a declaration. Write it as the first act of a new authority you are claiming over the record of your own life. The words carry intention, and intention is the first instrument of law. Write them, and let that act be the opening move of the severance protocol. Write them now, and then let us begin the work. To understand why the law of forgiveness operates with such absolute authority over your circumstances, you must first understand what Fox called the physics of resentment. The word physics is chosen deliberately, because what Fox was describing is not a soft psychological observation. It is a precise description of how energy behaves within the medium of mind, which is the fundamental substance of all reality. When you hold resentment toward a person who wronged you, you are not simply experiencing an emotion that exists inside you and affects no one else. You are, in the language of law, maintaining an active energetic contract with that person. You are keeping a circuit open between your consciousness and theirs. Their energy, the energy of the offense, the wound, the betrayal, is running through that open circuit continuously, draining your creative reserve as consistently and as measurably as a short circuit drains a battery. Consider what this means in practical terms. The person who hurt you may have moved on entirely. They may not think of you at all. They may be living their life with complete indifference to the damage they caused, and yet, in your mind, the case is still open. The courtroom is still in session. The wound is still being litigated daily in the courtroom of your own consciousness, and every moment of that litigation costs you something. It costs you clarity. It costs you creative energy. It costs you the present moment awareness that is the only place where new blueprints can be drawn and new structures can be erected. You are paying rent on a property you no longer inhabit to a landlord who has forgotten you exist. This is not poetry. This is the precise mechanical consequence of an open, energetic contract. The same physics applies with even greater intensity when the resentment is directed inward, when the person you cannot forgive is yourself. If you hold guilt, self-condemnation, or chronic regret for a past action, you are tying your present self to a past version of you that no longer exists. That version of you made a decision under a specific set of circumstances, with a specific level of consciousness, with access to a specific and limited body of information. That version of you is, in a very real metaphysical sense, dead. It no longer exists in the present moment. The action it took is complete. The event is over. And yet your refusal to issue the cancellation decree means that you are dragging a corpse into every new day, insisting that the living must be judged by the dead, that your present capacity must be continuously discounted by the failures of a self you have since outgrown. Fox was unambiguous about this point, and his logic is airtight. The law of forgiveness has nothing whatsoever to do with whether the other person deserves to be forgiven. This is the crucial distinction that separates the law from the sentiment. When you forgive by the logic of law, not by the warmth of feeling, not by the softening of the heart, but by the cold authority of understanding, you are not making a moral judgment about the worthiness of the offender. You are not declaring that what they did was acceptable. You are not even, in the first instance, doing anything for them at all. You are performing a strictly surgical act upon your own energetic system. You are cutting the tether not for their benefit, but for yours, because the tether is damaging you. And the law of your own being demands that you protect your capacity to receive your good. Understand the precise logic here, because it is the fulcrum upon which this entire teaching rests. You are the thinker. You are the first cause of your own experience. The external world, the circumstances, the relationships, the financial conditions, the health, is effect. Effect has no power of its own. Effect cannot originate. It can only reflect. It reflects, with perfect mathematical accuracy, the pattern that is held in the consciousness of the thinker. Therefore, when you hold the pattern of resentment, when you maintain the energetic blueprint of, "I have been wronged, and I am still in the wound of it," the law does not argue with you. It does not counsel you toward a better pattern. It simply, mechanically and without any deviation, produces in your external circumstances the effect that corresponds to that pattern. Your life becomes, in its outer architecture, a three-dimensional printout of the inner blueprint of grievance you are holding. This is why Fox's instruction is so purely logical, so entirely devoid of sentiment. He is not asking you to forgive because it is the virtuous thing to do, though it may well be. He is not asking you to forgive because it will make you a more spiritual person, though it may accomplish that as well. He is asking you to forgive because, as long as you refuse, you are operating your consciousness as a machine that is designed to produce and perpetuate the very conditions of limitation, lack, and pain from which you are desperately trying to escape. Holding the resentment while seeking freedom is the precise equivalent of pressing the accelerator and the brake simultaneously, and then wondering why the car is not moving. The car cannot move. The law will not allow it. Not because the law is punishing you, but because the law is perfectly, impersonally, and irrevocably reflecting the pattern you are projecting. It follows, therefore, that the act of forgiveness is not a gift you bestow upon another. It is a surgical intervention you perform upon yourself. It is the act of withdrawing your own consciousness from an investment that is generating catastrophic negative returns. Fox used the language of self-preservation deliberately. He understood that human beings, when instructed to forgive on moral grounds, would encounter the enormous resistance of the ego, which insists that forgiveness is surrender, that it is weakness, that it lets the offender off the hook. Fox bypassed this resistance entirely by reframing the transaction. Forgiveness, properly understood, does not let the offender off any hook. It removes the hook from your own flesh. What happens to them subsequently is their business, governed by their own consciousness and their own encounter with the law. Your business is the integrity of your own energetic system. Consider the analogy of a financial investment. Suppose you invested a significant amount of capital in a venture that failed due to the fraud of a partner. The money is gone. The fraud is done. The past event is complete and unchangeable. Now you have two options. The first option is to maintain the contract of loss, to keep your mental and emotional capital continuously invested in relitigating the fraud, rehearsing the betrayal, and nurturing the resentment. This investment produces a guaranteed and compounding return of creative paralysis, blocked intuition, and a pattern of consciousness that will continue to attract corresponding experiences of being defrauded and diminished. The second option is to execute the cancellation decree, to withdraw your investment from the dead account of the past and redirect the full force of your creative consciousness toward the present moment, where new blueprints can be drawn, new capital can be generated, and new structures can be built on clean ground. The law of forgiveness is therefore fundamentally an act of energetic reallocation. It is the decision to stop spending your most precious resource, the focused, intentional power of your own mind, on a transaction that is already complete and closed, and to redirect that resource toward the open, living, generative present. Fox was extraordinarily precise about this. He taught that the human mind is not infinite in its daily available capacity for focused intention. It has, at any given moment, a working reserve of creative energy that can be directed toward the construction of new conditions. Every degree of that energy that is locked in the maintenance of resentment or guilt is a degree that is unavailable for construction. You are in effect financing your own limitation with your own power. Consequently, when a person who has been carrying a heavy load of resentment for years suddenly executes the genuine cancellation decree and releases the energetic contract of their grievance, something remarkable and entirely predictable because it is the simple operation of law, begins to occur in their external life. Creative energy that was trapped in the circuitry of the old grievance is suddenly liberated. Ideas that could not form in the congested medium of a resentment-saturated consciousness begin to emerge with clarity and force. Opportunities that the law could not deliver into the pattern of a grievance-focused mind begin to materialize. Relationships that were repelled by the energetic signature of unresolved bitterness begin to appear. These are not miraculous events. They are the simple mechanical consequence of withdrawing a blocking pattern from a medium that responds to thought with perfect and undeviating accuracy. Fox was also precise about the nature of guilt as a distinct but equally destructive form of this same tethering mechanism. Guilt, he taught, is resentment directed inward, the same energetic contract, the same open circuit, the same drain on the creative reserve, but with the self as both the creditor and the debtor. The person carrying guilt believes at some level that their self-condemnation is spiritually appropriate, that to forgive themselves too readily would be to demonstrate a lack of moral seriousness, a callousness about the harm they may have caused. Fox identified this belief as not merely mistaken, but as a profound form of spiritual arrogance, and we will examine that diagnosis in full detail in Part 4. For now, it is sufficient to understand that guilt operates by precisely the same physics as resentment. It is a tether connecting your present energetic system to a past event, and it produces by the same mechanism an identical drain on your creative capacity and an identical distortion of your outgoing blueprint. It is critical to understand that the law of forgiveness does not operate on feelings alone. This is one of the most important technical distinctions in all of Fox's teaching. You do not need to feel forgiving in order to execute the cancellation decree effectively. You do not need to experience a warm rush of compassion or a cathartic release of tears. These things may or may not accompany the process, and their presence or absence is irrelevant to the mechanical operation of the law. What the law responds to is not the emotional temperature of your inner state, but the quality of the decree that your consciousness issues. The decree must be clear, definite, and absolute. It must be issued from the understanding of why it is being executed, not from sentiment, not from a desire to appear spiritually advanced, but from the cold, authoritative recognition that the tether is no longer serving the thinker who holds it, as that the law requires its dissolution. Therefore, as you approach the practical execution of this protocol, you must approach it not as a wounded person trying to feel better, but as an auditor reviewing the accounts of your own consciousness. You are examining the ledger of your inner life, identifying the open accounts that are generating negative returns, the active contracts that are draining your creative reserve, and you are, with the detachment of a professional and the authority of a thinker who understands the law, marking each one for closure. You are not sad about closing them. You are not conflicted. You are not negotiating with the ego's desire to maintain the grievance as a trophy of your suffering. You are simply administering the affairs of your own mind with the efficiency and precision that the law both enables and demands. The bolt cutter that Fox placed in your hand is sharp enough to sever any chain, regardless of how long it has been in place, regardless of how deeply it has been embedded in the architecture of your consciousness. The length of time you have held the grievance does not increase its power over the law. It only increases the degree of relief that the execution of the decree will produce. A chain held for 20 years is cut just as cleanly and just as completely as one held for 20 days. The law does not grade on a curve of duration. It responds to the quality of the present moment instruction with which you direct it. Issue the decree with precision and authority. The bolt cutter will do its work. To understand the law of forgiveness at the level of pure mechanism, stripped of all sentiment, all religious overlay, all cultural conditioning about what forgiveness is supposed to feel like, consider the analogy of a computer system. This analogy is not merely illustrative, it maps with near-perfect accuracy onto the metaphysical model that Fox was describing. Your conscious mind is the user interface, the part of the system you interact with directly, the part that perceives, decides, and intends. Your subconscious mind is the operating system, the deep processing architecture that runs continuously beneath the surface, executing the programs that have been installed in it, without judgment, without discrimination, without any capacity to question whether the program serves the system's highest function. The universal law, the infinite creative medium through which all conditions are produced, is the hardware, the physical substrate that executes whatever the operating system instructs with complete and unfailing reliability. Now consider what happens when a virus enters this system. A trauma occurs, a betrayal is experienced, a serious mistake is made. In the moment of the event, a corrupted file is downloaded into the operating system. A program that says, in essence, this person is a threat, or I am fundamentally flawed, or the world is a place where good things are taken from me. The conscious mind, the user, experiences the pain of the initial event and then, in most cases, attempts to move on. The conscious mind forgets, or at least suppresses, the event. But the corrupted file remains in the operating system. It continues to run. And because the operating system is the blueprint from which all external conditions are generated, every output of your life, every relationship, every financial outcome, every creative endeavor, is now being processed through a system that contains this corrupted file. The outputs are distorted, they carry the signature of the corruption. The system is running slowly, crashing at critical moments, producing results that the conscious mind cannot explain because the conscious mind has forgotten the virus is there. This is the precise metaphysical mechanism that Fox identified as the source of what he called the sin that is not forgiven. Not unforgiven by God, not unforgiven by the moral order of the universe, but unforgiven by you, left active as an unresolved pattern in the architecture of your own consciousness. The universe, the hardware, does not know that the file is corrupted. It does not evaluate the quality of the programs it executes. It simply runs what is installed. Therefore, when the operating system contains the program of an old resentment, the hardware dutifully produces in three-dimensional physical reality the conditions that correspond to that program. It is not punishing you. It is serving you with perfect efficiency. It is giving you exactly what your deepest pattern is requesting. The problem is that the pattern being requested is the pattern of an old wound, and the result is a life that continuously reflects the signature of that wound in new forms. Understand the logical consequence of this model with absolute clarity. The question, why does this keep happening to me? The pattern of repeated betrayal, repeated financial loss, repeated relational failure is answered entirely within this framework. You are not unlucky. You are not cursed. You are not being targeted by a hostile universe. You are experiencing the perfectly accurate output of a system that is running a corrupted program. The hardware is functioning flawlessly. The operating system is executing its instructions without error. The only problem is that the instructions themselves contain a virus, and that virus will continue to generate corrupted outputs with mathematical certainty for as long as it remains active in the system. There is no amount of conscious-level effort, no positive thinking, no goal setting, no strategy that can permanently override a corrupted operating system. These conscious interventions are like repeatedly clicking the refresh button on a browser that is running on a crashed operating system. The gesture is futile until the underlying system is repaired. The cancellation decree is the antivirus scan. This is the precise functional description of what forgiveness accomplishes at the level of law. When you execute the decree with the full authority of your understanding, when you issue the clear, definite, absolute command that the old contract is dissolved, the old file is marked for deletion, the old program is terminated, you are not performing an emotional exercise. You are performing a systems operation on your own consciousness. You are running the scan that identifies the corrupted file, quarantines it from the active processes of your operating system, and initiates the deletion sequence. The hardware, the universal law, responds immediately and automatically to this operation. It does not require a period of adjustment. It does not need to be convinced. It simply, upon receipt of the new instruction, begins to generate outputs that correspond to a clean system. The analogy deepens when we examine the nature of guilt specifically. If resentment is a virus downloaded from an external source, someone else's action entering your system and corrupting it, then guilt is something even more precisely destructive. Guilt is the equivalent of the user actively choosing to keep the corrupted file, moving it to a protected folder, and setting it to run at every startup. The conscious mind knows the file is there. The conscious mind did not merely fail to delete it, it actively preserved it, backed it up, and ensured that it would continue to run with every new session. This is why Fox identified guilt as perhaps the most damaging of all the patterns he addressed. Resentment is at least passive. The virus arrived uninvited. Guilt is active. The thinker is willfully maintaining the corruption of their own system. The good news is that this also means the thinker has complete authority to terminate it. What the conscious mind installed, the conscious mind can uninstall. It is important to understand that the deletion does not require that you pretend the event never occurred. The antivirus analogy is precise here as well. When you run a scan and delete a corrupted file, the event that introduced the virus, the moment you clicked the bad link, is not erased from history. It happened. It is part of the record. What changes is its status in the active architecture of the system. It moves from an active program that is running continuously and shaping every output to an inert piece of historical data that has no current operational function. This is exactly what Fox meant by genuine forgiveness. The memory of the event may remain accessible, but it carries no more emotional charge than reading a line from a history book about an event that happened to someone else. It is information. It is not an instruction. It is not a program. It is an archived file that is no longer running. The system, once clean, does not require monitoring to prevent the old virus from returning on its own. A properly deleted file does not reinstall itself. What can happen, however, and this is a critical technical point, is that the user, through habit or ego, can choose to reinstall it. When the memory of the old offense surfaces, as it periodically will, because memory is not fully subject to conscious control, the user has a choice. They can open the file, engage with it emotionally, feed it with renewed attention and resentment, and thereby re-execute the installation sequence. Or they can observe the appearance of the file, recognize it for what it is, an archived record of a closed account, and state with calm authority, that account is closed, the balance is zero. This is not suppression, this is not denial. This is the thinker exercising their authority as the administrator of their own operating system, refusing to reinstall a program that has been deliberately and definitively deleted. The selfish logic of this process deserves to be stated one final time with full, unflinching clarity, because it is the element that Fox considered most important for cutting through the ego's resistance. You do not forgive because the offender deserves it. You do not forgive because you are obligated to by a moral code. You do not forgive because it makes you a bigger person, or a more evolved soul, though these may be true. You forgive because your computer is running slowly and you need to delete the virus. You forgive because you are tired of financing your own limitation with your own power. You forgive because you have examined the account with the eye of an auditor and determined with cold analytical precision that maintaining the balance serves no function that benefits you and every function that damages you. You forgive because the law is impersonal, and the law requires a clean blueprint to build a clean structure. The universe is not waiting for your emotions to improve. It is waiting for your pattern to change. Change the pattern. Execute the decree. Let the hardware do what it was designed to do. The logic is unshakable and it is complete. A corrupted system produces corrupted outputs. A clean system produces clean outputs. The antivirus exists. It is available to you at every moment, in every circumstance, for every offense, regardless of severity, regardless of duration. The only requirement is that you run it, not half-heartedly, not with one foot in the deletion and one foot in the preservation. Completely, definitively, and with the full authority of a thinker who understands exactly what they are doing and exactly why. Press delete. The system will respond. The law does not fail. It cannot fail. It is not designed to fail. It is designed to execute, with perfect fidelity, whatever instruction it receives from the consciousness that operates it. Give it a clean instruction, and it will build you a clean world. Before a single word of the decree is spoken, before a single visualization is attempted, before the severance protocol is initiated in any of its practical steps, there is a prerequisite state of mind that must be established. Fox was precise about this, and the precision matters enormously, because attempting to execute the cancellation decree from the wrong inner posture is one of the primary reasons the process fails. It fails not because the law is unreliable, but because the instruction given to the law is contaminated by the very pattern it is attempting to dissolve. The prerequisite state of mind is what I will call clinical detachment. This is not coldness. It is not the suppression of feeling. It is a specific quality of consciousness, a particular elevation of perspective, from which the entire exercise can be conducted with the authority and precision that the law requires. Clinical detachment is the inner posture of the surgeon, not the patient. It is the stance of the engineer examining the blueprint, not the homeowner living in the damaged building. Consider what clinical detachment is not, so that the distinction is absolute. It is not the emotional heat of confrontation, the state of mind in which you are reviewing the offense while still inside the wound, still feeling the full biochemical force of the original injury. From this state, the decree cannot be executed cleanly, because the consciousness issuing the decree is still fully invested in the reality of the grievance. It is like trying to delete a file while it is simultaneously open and running in the foreground. The system cannot complete the deletion because the process is still active. Many people attempt forgiveness from this state and wonder why it does not produce the liberation Fox promised. The reason is that they have skipped the prerequisite. They have attempted to perform a surgical procedure without first administering the anesthetic. The surgery cannot be completed successfully under those conditions. Clinical detachment is also not the numb dissociation of someone who has simply exhausted their capacity to feel the wound and has mistaken exhaustion for forgiveness. This is a subtle distinction, but a critical one. Emotional exhaustion has the surface appearance of detachment. The person no longer feels the acute pain of the offense, but it is a passive and unstable state, not an active and authoritative one. It does not represent the thinker's conscious assumption of power over the pattern. It represents the temporary depletion of the energy that was sustaining the pattern. The pattern itself remains intact, and as soon as the person's energy is restored, the resentment will return with full force. True clinical detachment, by contrast, is an active choice, a deliberate elevation of perspective that the thinker consciously assumes and holds. The correct mental image for the state of clinical detachment is that of an experienced auditor or an archivist who has been called in to review a set of old files. The auditor sits down at the desk, opens the filing cabinet, and begins to review the records. The records may contain accounts of serious losses, significant damages, substantial errors. The auditor reads each one carefully, objectively, and without emotional investment. They are not indifferent to the facts. They understand what occurred. They note the amounts, they register the events. But they are not inside the events. They are not experiencing them as personal affronts. They are examining them as data, as historical records of transactions that have been completed and whose only remaining relevance is to the question of whether the account can now be formally closed. This is precisely the inner posture you must assume before you execute the cancellation decree. The auditor reviewing old useless files with the sole purpose of marking them for closure and shredding them permanently from the active archive. How does one achieve this state practically? Fox's teaching points clearly to the role of the breath and of deliberate mental elevation. Before you begin the protocol, you must consciously step back from the emotional content of the grievance, not by suppressing it, but by consciously choosing to view it from a higher vantage point. You are not the wounded person in the story. You are the consciousness that contains the wounded person's story as one record among many in a filing cabinet of experience. You are not the computer that has been infected. You are the systems administrator who has arrived to clean the system. The shift from "I am in this wound" to "I am the administrator of the system that contains this wound" is the shift into clinical detachment. It is a choice of identity, and it is a choice that you can make deliberately, consciously, and with practice, increasingly quickly. It is worth noting that this required state directly contradicts the emotional approach to forgiveness that is most commonly taught. The conventional approach suggests that you must feel your way into forgiveness, that you must excavate the full depth of your grief, fully honor your anger, and then gradually, over time, feel the emotions soften into something warmer and more releasing. Fox did not deny the value of emotional processing in its appropriate context, but he was unequivocal that the cancellation decree, as an act of law, does not require emotional warmth. It requires mental clarity and authority. The surgeon does not need to feel fond of the tumor in order to remove it. The auditor does not need to feel nostalgic about the old debt in order to mark it paid and closed. The precision of the act is what matters, not the emotional coloring that accompanies it. Consequently, if you approach the severance protocol and find yourself flooded with emotion, with grief, with rage, with the burning heat of the original wound, do not attempt to force your way through it. Do not override the emotion with sheer willpower and attempt to recite the decree anyway. Instead, pause, breathe deliberately, step back consciously from the emotional content. Name what you are experiencing with clinical precision. This is a charge associated with a closed account. The account is in the process of being closed. The charge is not the account. It is the residual energy of a transaction that is being terminated. This naming process is itself an act of clinical detachment. It reestablishes your identity as the observer of the pattern rather than the person inside it. And from that reestablished position, the decree can be executed cleanly and with full authority. The preparation phase also requires a specific acknowledgement that is easy to overlook, but that Fox considered essential to the integrity of the process. Before you execute the decree, you must acknowledge, with clarity and without self-deception, the precise nature of what you are releasing. You must identify the specific account that is being closed, not a vague general feeling of resentment toward the world or toward a category of experience, a specific person, a specific event, a specific mistake. The law operates on specific patterns, and the decree must be directed at a specific target to be effective. The auditor does not close an entire filing cabinet with one sweeping gesture. They close individual accounts, one by one, with a specific notation for each. Bring the specific person or the specific past version of yourself into the precise focus of your mind's attention. Know exactly what you are releasing. Know exactly what contract you are terminating. Then, and only then, are you prepared to execute the decree. There is one final element of the preparatory state that must be addressed, and it concerns the intention that underlies the act. As has been established, the intention of the cancellation decree is not altruistic, not moral, not sentimental. It is surgical and self-preserving. But within this surgical intention, there must be a genuine, non-negotiable commitment to finality. The decree is not a trial run. It is not a negotiation. It is not an attempt to see whether forgiveness might make you feel better before you decide whether to fully commit to it. It is a final, binding, irrevocable act of the thinker's authority over the pattern of their own consciousness. You must enter it with the full understanding that you are executing a permanent closure, that you are not leaving the door open for the account to be reopened at a later date when the ego decides it needs the grievance back as evidence. The decree must be issued with the finality of a signed legal document. Half measures do not satisfy the law. The law requires a complete and unambiguous instruction, and it is only to a complete and unambiguous instruction that it responds with complete and unambiguous results. This preparatory state, this establishment of clinical detachment, This precise identification of the target, this commitment to finality, is the foundation upon which the entire severance protocol rests. Attempting to build the protocol without this foundation is like attempting to construct a precise and load-bearing structure on unstable ground. The structure will not hold, the decree will not take full effect. The liberation Fox promised will be partial, temporary, and ultimately disappointing. But when the foundation is laid correctly, when the thinker arrives at the threshold of the decree in the posture of the auditor, with the specific account identified and the commitment to finality established, the execution of the protocol becomes not merely possible, but inevitable in its effect. The law is waiting. The mechanism is ready. The only variable is your readiness to operate it with precision. Establish the foundation. Then proceed. Among the many refinements of the preparatory state, there is one that deserves its own dedicated moment of reflection before the protocol begins. It concerns the question of permission, specifically the permission you give yourself to be free. This may sound too simple to be significant, but Fox identified it as one of the most common points of failure in the entire process of forgiveness. Many people approach the cancellation decree having already decided, at some deep level of their consciousness, that they are not allowed to be fully free of the past, that the weight of what occurred is the appropriate price of the mistake, and that releasing it prematurely would be a form of getting off too easily. This is the ego's final defense of the grievance, and it is extraordinarily subtle. It operates not as overt resistance to forgiveness, but as a quiet conviction that the liberation the decree promises is, in your specific case, not quite appropriate. You must consciously, deliberately, and explicitly grant yourself permission to be free before the protocol begins. This is not a rhetorical gesture. It is a technical act of the thinker's authority, and it addresses a resistance in the subconscious operating system that, if left unaddressed, will function as a backdoor reinstallation mechanism, allowing the conscious mind to execute the decree while the subconscious quietly reestablishes the pattern behind the scenes. The permission statement is simple, and it can be stated aloud or silently with equal effect. I am allowed to be free of this. The law grants me this freedom. I accept the freedom with no conditions and no reservations. This statement, issued from a place of genuine understanding, dissolves the final resistance before the protocol begins and ensures that the decree, when executed, lands in a system that is ready and willing to receive it. With the preparatory state fully established, with clinical detachment achieved, the target identified, the commitment to finality secured, and the permission to freedom granted, the severance protocol can now be executed with complete precision. The last preparation you must make is to understand with crystalline clarity what you are about to do and what it will cost you. What it will cost you is the grievance itself, the story, the identity of the wronged party, the evidence that you have suffered, the narrative that explains why you are where you are. For some people, this is a deeply familiar and strangely comfortable possession. The grievance has been carried for so long that it has become part of the identity, part of the story of who you are and why the world treated you as it did. To execute the cancellation decree is to surrender this story entirely. You will no longer be the person who was wronged by that betrayal. You will no longer be the person whose current limitations are explained by that past mistake. You will simply be the thinker, standing in a present moment that is completely clean, completely open, and completely governed by whatever new blueprint you now choose to hold. For some, this is a relief beyond measure. For others, it is terrifying, because the clean slate means there are no more excuses, no more explanations, no more narratives to manage. There is only the raw, open, accountable present, and the full weight of your own creative authority. This is the price of the decree. It is worth every penny. Now you are ready. The foundation is complete. The instrument is in your hand. Let us execute the protocol. Step 1 is target identification. This is the act of bringing the specific person, event, or past version of yourself into the precise, deliberate focus of your mind's attention. Not a vague impression, not a general sense of the offense, a specific, clear, and detailed mental image of the exact account that is being closed. Sit in silence before you begin. not the passive silence of distraction, but the active silence of a consciousness that has stilled its surface noise and is prepared to work. Close your eyes. Breathe deliberately and slowly until the mental chatter of the immediate moment recedes and the deeper field of your focused attention is accessible. Then, with the calm authority of the auditor who has come to close an account, bring the person into your mind's eye, or bring the memory of the event, or bring the image of the past version of yourself who made the mistake whose consequences you have been carrying. Look at what you have brought before you with objective clarity. Do not turn away. Do not soften the image or make it smaller than it is. Look at it directly with the steady, unafraid gaze of the administrator who is about to do their work. If what you have brought before you is another person, look at them as Fox instructed. Not with warmth, not with resentment, but with the clinical acknowledgement of a being who, at a specific moment in time, took a specific action that created a specific consequence in your life. They are not a monster. They are not a saint. They are a human being operating at whatever level of consciousness they possessed at that moment, generating the effects that corresponded to their inner blueprint. Their action entered your system and installed a virus. That is the factual record of the transaction. You are not here to evaluate them or to adjudicate their guilt. You are here to close the account and terminate the energetic contract. Look at them with this understanding. Hold them in your mind's eye with this clarity. This is target identification completed. The account is open before you, the record is clear, and you are ready to issue the decree. If what you have brought before you is a past version of yourself, the self that made the decision, spoke the words, took the action whose shadow has been following you ever since, look at that version of yourself with the same clinical objectivity. This is perhaps the more challenging form of target identification, because the temptation to collapse back into self-judgment is powerful. The moment you look at the past self who made the mistake, the conditioned response is to feel the familiar burn of shame, the contracting weight of guilt, the voice that says, "How could you have done that?" Resist this collapse. Return to the posture of the auditor. The person you are looking at is not you, not the you that exists in this present moment, operating with a current level of consciousness and a current body of experience. That past self was a separate version, operating under separate conditions, making the best decision it was capable of making at that level of awareness. It made a mistake. The mistake is recorded. You are here to close the account, not to relitigate the trial. Look at the past self with the dispassionate recognition of a professional who is dealing with a closed case, and hold it in your mind's eye with that steadiness. Step 2 is the decree of release. This is the central operative act of the entire severance protocol, and it must be executed with full deliberate authority. The words of the decree are not casual. They are not suggestions. They are not requests addressed to the other person or to the universe asking for permission to feel better. They are commands, binding, unequivocal declarations issued by the thinker to the universal mechanism, instructing it to close the account that you have identified and to terminate the energetic contract that has been maintained. Fox's formula for this decree is precise, and its precision is intentional. Every clause performs a specific function within the architecture of the release. You will speak the following words, either aloud, if the circumstances permit, or with the full focused authority of your inner voice, if they do not. Aloud is preferable, because the act of physically speaking the decree adds a dimension of commitment and specificity that the purely mental recitation sometimes lacks. Speak clearly. Speak slowly. Speak as if you mean every syllable, because you do. The decree is this: I fully and freely forgive you. I loose you and let you go. The past is dead. The debt is cancelled. You are free, and I am free. Examine each clause of this decree, because each one performs a distinct function in the architecture of the release. I fully and freely forgive you. The word fully closes the loophole of partial forgiveness, the state of having forgiven some of the offense while secretly maintaining a reserve of resentment for the worst of it. Fully means the entire account, every line item, every clause of the contract, without exception and without reservation. freely addresses the quality of the act. It is not forgiveness under duress, not forgiveness extracted by moral obligation or social pressure, but forgiveness issued from the free exercise of the thinker's authority and will. These two words together close both the quantitative and the qualitative loopholes through which the ego most commonly attempts to preserve a fragment of the grievance while appearing to have executed the release. I loose you and let you go. This clause directly addresses the energetic tether. It acknowledges explicitly that there has been a binding, and it declares explicitly that the binding is now dissolved. The word loose is deliberately active. You are performing an action, the action of releasing something that you have been holding. This is an acknowledgement of your own agency in the maintenance of the tether. You were the one holding it. You are the one now releasing it. Let you go completes the action by declaring the direction of the release, outward, away from you, into the full freedom of the other person's own experience. You are withdrawing your consciousness from their orbit entirely, severing every thread of your energetic investment in their reality, their guilt, their consequences. You are removing yourself completely from their account. The past is dead. This is perhaps the most metaphysically precise clause in the entire decree. It does not say the past is over or the past is behind me. It says the past is dead, meaning it has no more life, no more power, no more ability to generate present consequences, because you are withdrawing the only thing that was keeping it alive, which is your continuous mental investment in it. The past, Fox taught, is not independently alive. It does not have the power to reach forward into the present moment on its own. It is sustained in its influence only by the thinker's decision to keep consulting it, to keep accepting it as a present reality, to keep allowing it to inform the blueprint that is currently being projected into the creative medium. Declare it dead and withdraw the life support of your attention, and it will be dead. Not eventually. Now. The debt is cancelled. This is the specific language of the cancellation decree itself, embedded in the heart of Fox's formula. The debt is not paid. It is not forgiven in the sense of being overlooked or excused while remaining on the books. It is cancelled, struck from the record, removed from the ledger, rendered as if it never existed as a liability. This is the language of the cosmic loophole Fox identified. The debt does not have to be paid if it can be cancelled, and it can be cancelled at any moment by the thinker who holds it, because the thinker is the one who has been maintaining it as a real and current obligation. Remove that maintenance and the debt has no more reality. The ledger is clean. The account shows a balance of 0. You are free and I am free. The final clause of the decree is the declaration of bilateral liberation, and its symmetry is deliberate and significant. By declaring the other person free, you are completing the act of releasing your claim on their guilt, their obligation to suffer for what they did, your investment in their eventual punishment or repentance. This is the clause that most directly confronts the ego's resistance, because the ego's deepest attachment to the grievance is the attachment to the idea that the offender should pay. By declaring them free, you are dissolving that attachment with full authority and full awareness, and the completion of the clause, "and I am free," is the declaration of the consequence. Not, "I hope to become free," not, "I am trying to be free." I am free. Now. This moment. The decree has been issued. The mechanism is in motion. The freedom is not a future possibility. It is a present declaration, and the law will honor it. Step 3 is the incineration. This is the visualization component of the severance protocol, and while some practitioners of metaphysics are tempted to discount visualization as merely imaginative or decorative, Fox's teaching and the consistent evidence of its practice establish it as a functionally significant element of the process. Visualization operates in the medium of the subconscious mind, which is the operating system level, the level that actually runs the programs that produce the external conditions of your life. The conscious mind can issue the decree in words, and those words carry genuine authority. But to imprint the decree at the operating system level, to write the termination command directly into the architecture of the subconscious pattern, visualization is the most direct and efficient tool available. After the words of the decree have been spoken, close your eyes and see with as much clarity and specificity as you can generate a heavy chain. It runs from the center of your chest, from the energetic core of your being, to the person or the memory that you have just decreed free. See the chain clearly. See its weight. See how it has been pulling at you, tethering you, preventing the free movement of your energy in any direction. Do not flinch from the image. You need to see what has been holding you before you can see it severed. Now call forth the light of the decree. In Fox's metaphysical framework, a genuine and authoritative mental declaration generates in the medium of mind an immediate and corresponding effect. The decree is not merely spoken words. It is a directed force, a bright, concentrated command issued from the highest level of the thinker's authority. And in the medium of mind, it has the quality of a precise, focused beam of light. See this light? Call it white, call it gold, call it whatever color most fully represents to your mind the quality of an absolute and final authority. See it arrive at the point where the chain connects to you, the link nearest your chest, with the force and precision of a surgical instrument. Do not make it dramatic, make it clean. The light does not need to struggle against the chain. The authority of the decree is absolute, and the chain has no power to resist it. In the presence of the decree's light, the link severs instantly and completely. Watch the other end fall. This is the moment of liberation that Fox described as the consequence of genuine forgiveness, the felt experience of release that follows the execution of a complete and authoritative cancellation decree. As the severed end of the chain falls away from you, watch it recede, watch it diminish. Watch the person or the memory to which it was attached fade backward into the darkness, not into nothingness, not into non-existence, but into their own sphere of being, their own orbit, completely separate from yours, no longer connected to your energetic system, no longer drawing on your creative reserve, no longer sending or receiving anything through a wire that has been definitively cut. Let them go all the way. Do not pull them back with a last-minute surge of resentment or a final attempt to ensure they understand the gravity of what they did. Let them go completely, to the full extent of the universe. They are in their orbit. You are in yours. The orbits no longer intersect. Now breathe out. Deliberately, fully, and with the conscious intention of expelling the residual energy of the severed tether from your physical body. The exhalation is not merely physiological. It is the physical dimension of the release, the body's participation in the decree that the mind has issued. Breathe out as if you are physically expelling the weight of the chain from your lungs, your chest, your shoulders. Many practitioners of this protocol report an immediate and unexpected physical sensation at this point. A lightness, a dropping of tension in the upper body, a sensation of increased ease in breathing. Do not be surprised by this. It is the body's accurate report of a real change that has occurred in the energetic system. The body always knows. It has been carrying the weight of the tether in its own tissue, in the tension of its muscles, and the compression of its breathing. And the moment the tether is severed at the level of consciousness, the body begins to report the change in its own language. The protocol is now complete. The account is closed. The ledger shows 0. The chain is cut. But there is a final clause to the severance protocol that operates as what Fox called the ongoing maintenance of the clean system. It is not a step in the initial process. It is a standing instruction that governs your relationship to the memory from this point forward. The memory, as has been noted, may resurface. The brain does not delete memories the way a computer deletes files. The record will remain in the archive, but the decree has changed its status. The memory has been reclassified from an active program to an inert data file. When it surfaces, when the thought of the person or the event arises in your mind, you will not engage with it as if it were still live. You will not reopen the file. You will not allow the ego to begin reinstalling the program. You will simply, with the calm authority of the system's administrator who knows the state of the accounts, make the following declaration. That account is closed. The balance is 0. No drama, no elaboration, no negotiation. The account is closed, the balance is 0. State it, release the thought, and continue with your present moment. The law will honor the maintenance of the decree with the same fidelity with which it honored its execution. Now we arrive at the most dangerous section of this entire investigation, and I want you to receive what follows with the full clarity of the attention you have been applying throughout. The martyr's pardon is not a mild miscalculation. It is not a partial forgiveness that produces partial results. Fox identified it as a specific and systematic corruption of the forgiveness process, a pattern that uses the language and the gestures of the cancellation decree to satisfy the ego's desire to appear forgiving, while secretly preserving and even strengthening the very tether it claims to have cut. The martyr's pardon is, in energetic terms, the equivalent of announcing publicly that you have deleted the virus from your computer while privately moving it to a hidden folder. The system continues to run the virus. The outputs continue to reflect the corruption. And now the thinker has the additional burden of a self-deception layered on top of the original wound, the belief that they have already done the work of forgiveness, which prevents them from recognizing that the work remains to be done. The first and most common form of the martyr's pardon is what Fox called the most sophisticated fraud in the entire landscape of human self-deception. It is the pattern of saying, either to another person directly or to oneself in the privacy of one's own mind, "I forgive you, but I will never forget what you did." This statement is presented and experienced as forgiveness. It has the structure of a generous and mature response to a genuine injury. It is accepted in social and even spiritual circles as an admirable demonstration of realistic forgiveness, the kind that acknowledges human limitation while still extending the grace of release. Fox looked at this formulation with the precision of a diagnostic instrument and declared it a complete and utter fraud. There is no forgiveness in it. It is a rebranding of the grievance, not a termination of it. The forgive clause is a verbal concession to the ideal of release. The never forget clause is the ego's guarantee that the contract remains alive and active. The two clauses cancel each other, and what remains is the original tether, now wearing the disguise of a virtue. Understand why the never forget clause is the operative one. Fox's teaching makes clear that genuine forgiveness is not a moral gesture that exists in a separate compartment from the memory of the event. The memory and the emotional charge associated with it are not two separate things that can be independently managed, where you release the charge while preserving the wound or honor the wound while claiming the charge has been released. The emotional charge is the memory's active status. The charge is what makes the memory a running program rather than an inert file. If you retain the charge, if the memory of the offense can still produce upon recall the burning sensation of the original injury, the quickening of the pulse, the tightening of the chest, the heat of the old resentment, then the charge has not been released. The program is still running, the virus is still active. The fact that you said, "I forgive you" in the opening clause is operationally irrelevant. The law does not respond to what you said, it responds to what you are holding. And what you are holding is the full energetic reality of the unforgiving mind. True forgiveness, as Fox defined it with complete precision, means that the memory loses all emotional charge, not most of its charge, not the acute, hot charge of immediate injury, leaving a residual warm charge of lingering hurt. All of it. The memory of the event, when accessed, becomes inert data. It becomes the same kind of information as reading a historical record of an event that occurred to someone you do not know. You can recall the facts. You can report the sequence of events. You can describe what happened with complete accuracy and without any distortion. But the recall produces no heat, no contraction, no surge of the body's stress chemistry, no renewed activation of the protective and retaliatory impulses that characterized the original wound. The memory has become boring. This is not a sign of spiritual insensitivity. This is the precise indicator that the cancellation decree has been executed completely, that the account is genuinely closed, and that the program has been fully deleted rather than merely archived in a hidden folder. The second form of the martyr's pardon is subtler and more insidious, and Fox identified it as a manifestation of what he called supreme ego, a pattern so inflated with self-importance that it masquerades convincingly as humility and moral seriousness. This is the pattern of refusing to forgive yourself or to accept the forgiveness of the law, on the grounds that your particular sin is too severe, too consequential, or too deeply embedded in its damage to be eligible for the clean slate that the law otherwise offers. You have convinced yourself that the cancellation decree applies to ordinary mistakes, to the common traffic of human error, but not to what you did. What you did was different. What you did caused real, lasting harm. What you did crossed a line that cannot simply be erased by a mental exercise, however precisely performed. To use the decree on something this serious would be to trivialize the suffering of the people you harmed, or to evade an accountability that you believe you are obligated to maintain. This sounds on its surface like moral depth. Fox strips the disguise from it with one precise observation: this is arrogance. Examine the logic of this position with unsparing clarity. You are claiming that your human error, an action taken by a finite being operating within a finite consciousness, under specific circumstances, with specific limitations, is more powerful than the infinite grace of the universal law. You are claiming that the mechanism of the cancellation decree, which Fox identified as a fundamental law of consciousness operating throughout the entire structure of creation, has an exception clause written specifically for your particular case. You are claiming that you are, in effect, beyond the reach of the law. This is not humility. This is the most extreme form of ego inflation available to the human mind. True humility is the recognition that the law operates uniformly, without exception, for every thinker in every circumstance, including yours. True humility is the acceptance that you are not special enough to be permanently beyond the reach of the decree. True humility is dropping the arrogance of your guilt and accepting the pardon that the law has already issued, waiting only for your consciousness to receive it. Fox was careful to distinguish between the metaphysical act of applying the cancellation decree to your own past mistakes and the practical human-level responsibility for the consequences of those mistakes. These are two entirely different domains, operating by two entirely different logics, and confusing them is the root of the too big to forgive error. The cancellation decree operates at the level of consciousness. It terminates the energetic pattern of self-condemnation that is draining your creative reserve and corrupting your operating system. It does not terminate any practical obligation you may have to make amends, to restore what was damaged, to acknowledge the harm your actions caused. Those are matters of practical ethics and human relationship, and they operate by their own appropriate logic. The decree says nothing about them. What the decree does address, and addresses with complete authority, is your internal relationship to the event. You can simultaneously take full practical responsibility for a mistake's consequences while completely releasing the pattern of self-condemnation that is preventing you from being the person who is capable of making things right. In fact, releasing the pattern of guilt is often the precise precondition for finding the clarity, the creativity, and the genuine compassion required to make meaningful amends. Guilt does not make you more effective at repairing damage, it makes you less so. Drop the arrogance of the guilt, accept the pardon, then do the practical work from a place of clean, unobstructed consciousness. There is a third form of the martyr's pardon that does not involve words at all, and it is perhaps the most common of the three precisely because it operates entirely beneath the level of conscious awareness. It is the pattern of performing the cancellation decree as a ritual rather than as an act of genuine authority. The person goes through every step of the severance protocol with apparent correctness. They achieve a state of relative calm. They identify the target. They speak the words of the decree. They visualize the chain being severed. And yet, at some level of the subconscious operating system, there is a reservation, a holding back, a small, quiet, persistent part of the consciousness that is watching the process with crossed arms and a raised eyebrow, waiting for the ritual to be over so that things can return to normal. This reservation may be completely invisible to the conscious mind. The person may believe with complete sincerity that they have executed the decree. But the law is not reporting to the conscious mind's belief. It is responding to the actual quality of the pattern held in the totality of the consciousness. And if that totality contains a reservation, however small, however well hidden, The decree has not been executed completely, and the account has not been fully closed. The diagnostic for this third form of the martyr's pardon is simple and reliable. After executing the decree, observe your inner life over the following days. If the genuine cancellation decree has been executed, the dominant quality of your inner landscape regarding the specific person or event that was targeted will gradually shift from activated to neutral. The memory will surface with decreasing frequency and decreasing charge. New creative energy will begin to move in areas that were previously stagnant. There will be a quality of spaciousness, a sense of room having been created in your consciousness that was not present before. These are the indicators of a clean deletion. If, on the other hand, you find that within a short period of time the resentment or guilt has reasserted itself with its full original force, the diagnosis is that the decree was executed as a ritual, as a performance, rather than as a genuine act of the thinker's authority. This does not mean the process has failed. It means the process needs to be repeated, this time with a more deliberate and unflinching examination of where the reservation is being held, and a more complete commitment to the finality of the closure. The law does not tire of honoring genuine decrees. Execute it again. Execute it with full authority this time. The door will open. Fox also addressed a form of self-sabotage that is closely related to the martyr's pardon, but deserves its own distinct identification. It is the practice of what he called publicizing the grievance, the pattern of repeatedly telling the story of the offense to others, seeking validation for the injury, rehearsing the details of the wrongdoing in the social medium of conversation and complaint. Every time the story is told, the energetic contract with the event is renewed and reinforced. Every retelling is a reinstallation of the virus. Every listener who validates the injury by agreeing that it was terrible adds their own energy to the maintenance of the pattern. The social currency of victimhood, the sympathy, the solidarity, the temporary sense of being seen and understood that comes from having one's grievance acknowledged by others, is one of the ego's most powerful incentives for preserving the resentment rather than releasing it. Fox's instruction on this point is unambiguous and offers no comfort to the ego's social needs. If you have executed the cancellation decree, you stop telling the story. Not because you are suppressing it, not because you are pretending it didn't happen, but because there is nothing to tell. The account is closed, the balance is zero. There is no story because the event has been reclassified from a live ongoing injury to an inert historical record. A thinker who has genuinely closed an account does not continue to litigate it in the court of public opinion. Fox's master instruction on forgiveness cuts through all the forms of the martyr's pardon with the clean precision of the bolt cutter we have been examining throughout this investigation. He stated with the authority of a principle rather than a preference, "Forgiveness is the most powerful magnetic force in the world." This is a precise metaphysical claim, not an inspirational sentiment, and it must be understood in its full technical context to appreciate why it is true. The consciousness that has executed the cancellation decree with completeness and authority, that has cleared its operating system of the corrupted files of resentment and guilt, that has withdrawn its creative energy from the dead investments of old grievances and redirected it entirely to the present moment, is operating at a level of clarity, openness, and magnetic receptivity that is structurally incapable of manifesting in a consciousness congested with unresolved resentment. The thinker who has genuinely forgiven is not merely in a better emotional state. They are operating a fundamentally different quality of consciousness, one whose blueprint is clean, whose creative medium is unobstructed, and whose outgoing signal to the universal law carries none of the interference and distortion of the grievance pattern. Consequently, Fox continued, when you forgive in this complete and authoritative way, you release the blocked energy that was keeping your good away from you. This is the precise causal sequence. The resentment or guilt was functioning as a blockage, a pattern in the operating system that was generating an energetic signature incompatible with the reception of the good that the law was attempting to deliver. The good is always available. The law is always ready to execute. The blueprint of infinite supply, infinite health, and infinite harmony is the fundamental default pattern of the universal creative intelligence. What prevents its expression in any individual's life is the specific corrupted pattern that individual is holding in their consciousness. Remove the corruption, and the default pattern, which has been pressing for expression all along, can finally flow through the unobstructed medium of the cleared consciousness into the physical world as the specific forms of abundance, relationship, and creative vitality that correspond to that thinker's highest vision. This is not metaphorical. This is not optimistic. This is the mechanical description of a law that operates with the impersonal precision of mathematics. Clear the system. The good will not hesitate. The instruction Fox issued regarding the relationship between forgiveness and the magnetic force of consciousness is worth dwelling on at the level of practical application, because the abstract principle can feel impossibly distant from the concrete texture of a life weighed down by old wounds. Let us make it concrete. Consider what it means, in practical terms, to operate a consciousness that has been cleared of the pattern of resentment and guilt. It does not mean a consciousness that is naive about the reality of human harm or blind to the genuine damage that others can cause. It means a consciousness that has processed the reality of the harm through the mechanism of the decree and emerged from that processing with its full creative capacity restored and its blueprint re-established in the clarity of a present moment that is genuinely free from the past. In this state, the thinker's perceptual apparatus, their ability to recognize opportunity, to respond to creative impulse, to attract and to receive, is operating at its maximum sensitivity and efficiency. The static that was generated by the open circuit of the unresolved grievance has been eliminated, and the signal of intuition and creative intelligence can now be received with clarity and acted upon with precision. Fox understood that the law of forgiveness was not merely a mechanism for releasing the past. It was a mechanism for activating the future, for creating the precise inner conditions that make the reception of new good not merely possible, but inevitable. He used the language of magnetic force deliberately. A cleared consciousness does not passively wait for good to arrive. It actively draws it, with the same inexorable pull that a magnet exerts on iron. The pull is not random, it is specific. It draws to the thinker exactly the forms of good that are consistent with the blueprint they are now holding, which, freed from the distortion of old resentment, is the blueprint of their highest genuine vision for their life. The clarity of the attraction is directly proportional to the completeness of the clearing. A partially cleared consciousness draws partially toward the good, with interference and delay produced by the residual pattern. A completely cleared consciousness draws completely, with the full magnetic force of an undivided intention operating in a completely unobstructed medium. This is why Fox's instruction about forgiveness as a selfish act is not merely rhetorical cleverness, but precise, practical strategy. The person who forgives most completely benefits most immediately and most substantially from the operation of the law. Every degree of completeness with which the decree is executed translates directly into a corresponding degree of magnetic clarity, and that magnetic clarity translates directly into the speed and specificity with which the universal law delivers the good that corresponds to the thinker's blueprint. You are not forgiving to benefit the other person. You are not forgiving to demonstrate spiritual maturity. You are forgiving to maximize the efficiency of your own consciousness as the instrument through which the law operates. You are clearing the path for your own good to reach you. This is the most elegant and the most compelling argument for the cancellation decree, not its moral beauty, though it has that, but its ruthless and precise effectiveness as a mechanism for the liberation and empowerment of the thinker who executes it. Among the practical dimensions of Fox's teaching on forgiveness, there is one instruction that students consistently report as the most immediately effective and the most surprisingly simple. He taught that the fastest way to dissolve a stubborn resentment, one that has resisted repeated attempts at the cancellation decree, is to actively hold in consciousness the specific good that you wish for the person you are trying to release. Not as a performance of spiritual generosity, as a strategic operation. You deliberately, consciously, and specifically wish them well. You identify the thing they most need or most desire, success, peace, health, love, and you hold the image of them receiving it in your mind with genuine intention. you bless them. The reason this works at the level of law is precise. Resentment is an energetic investment in the person's limitation, a subconscious wish that they be diminished, punished, or deprived of good. It is this investment in their limitation that maintains the open circuit between your consciousness and theirs. When you genuinely wish them well, when you authentically hold the image of their good, you are withdrawing the investment in their limitation, and the circuit collapses. The tether dissolves not from the force of your own willpower, but from the removal of the energetic content that was sustaining it. Fox considered this technique to be among the most potent in his entire body of practice, and practitioners who have applied it consistently report results that are both rapid and unmistakable. For those who require the confirmation of empirical science before committing fully to the severance protocol, and that requirement is entirely rational, because the law of forgiveness is, as Fox consistently maintained, a law of the actual universe, and therefore subject to scientific investigation. The last 3 decades of neuroscience, psychoneuroimmunology, and stress physiology provide confirmation of Fox's metaphysical model, so precise that it borders on the remarkable. The bridge between the metaphysical and the neurological begins with the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep in the brain's limbic system that functions as the primary threat detection and emotional response center of the human nervous system. The amygdala does not operate in linear time. It does not distinguish between a threat that is occurring in the present moment and a threat that occurred years ago but is being vividly recalled. When you replay a memory of betrayal, humiliation, or loss, the amygdala responds to the neural pattern of that memory with the same biochemical urgency it would deploy in response to an immediate physical danger. It fires, it triggers. The consequence of the amygdala's activation, whether in response to a present threat or a recalled one, is the release of cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, from the adrenal glands. This is the biological mechanism by which Fox's tether expresses itself at the level of the body's chemistry. Cortisol is a molecule of emergency. It is designed for short bursts of activation in response to acute threats, after which the system is designed to return to baseline. But when the thinker maintains an unresolved pattern of resentment or guilt, when the amygdala is being continuously triggered by the recycled memory of old wounds, the cortisol release becomes chronic. It becomes a baseline condition. The body is living in a state of perpetual emergency, flooded by a chemistry designed for acute crisis that it was never engineered to sustain as a permanent operating condition. The effects of this chronic cortisol flooding are now among the most thoroughly documented findings in the entire field of stress medicine. The impact of chronic cortisol elevation on the human biological system is precisely what Fox described in metaphysical terms as the drain produced by the energetic tether. The immune system is directly and measurably suppressed. The cells responsible for identifying and destroying pathogens and abnormal cells operate with significantly reduced efficiency in a high cortisol environment. The prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for higher cognitive function, creative problem solving, long-range planning, and the quality of thought that Fox would have recognized as the activity of the thinker at their clearest and most powerful, is effectively throttled by the cortisol-saturated chemistry of the chronically activated amygdala. The person operating under chronic stress is not merely unhappy, they are neurologically diminished. Their capacity to think clearly, to perceive opportunity accurately, to generate the quality of creative thought that produces new solutions to old problems, is measurably reduced by the biochemical signature of their unresolved resentment. The research on the neurological and physiological effects of genuine forgiveness, not the verbal performance of forgiveness, but the measured reduction in amygdala reactivity and cortisol levels that accompanies a complete and genuine release of resentment, is equally precise and equally striking. Studies conducted at institutions including Stanford University's Forgiveness Project and the HeartMath Institute, among others, demonstrate that subjects who underwent structured forgiveness interventions showed measurable reductions in cortisol production, measurable improvements in immune function, measurable decreases in the frequency and intensity of amygdala activation in response to recalled memories of the offense, and measurable improvements in cognitive function, creative performance, and subjective well-being. These are not self-reported feelings. These are biochemical and neurological measurements. The cancellation decree, when executed genuinely, chemically alters the bloodstream. It physically restructures the neural pattern associated with the memory. It deactivates the amygdala's loop, the continuous firing and refiring of the threat response in relation to the old wound, and restores the system to the baseline state of clarity and openness from which the thinker can operate at full capacity. The language Fox used to describe this restoration, turning off the acid of stress and turning on the alkaline of peace, is not merely poetic. The stress alkalinity metaphor maps with surprising precision onto the actual biochemistry involved. Chronic stress physiology is associated with a shift in the body's inflammatory markers toward what researchers describe as a pro-inflammatory state, an internal chemistry that is, in measurable terms, corrosive, breaking down cellular integrity, accelerating aging processes, and compromising the structural resilience of virtually every major organ system. The chemistry of genuine relaxation and safety, the neuroendocrine state that follows the genuine release of a chronic threat response, is anti-inflammatory by measurable definition. The shift from the cortisol-dominated chemistry of unresolved resentment to the oxytocin and serotonin-supported chemistry of genuine forgiveness and release is, in the language of the body's actual molecular biology, a shift from a corrosive to a restorative internal environment. Fox was describing this shift from the vantage point of metaphysical law. The neuroscientists are now describing it from the vantage point of molecular biology. They are describing the same event. One of the most illuminating findings of recent forgiveness research concerns the distinction between genuine forgiveness and the mere suppression or management of resentment. A distinction that maps precisely onto Fox's distinction between the genuine cancellation decree and the martyr's pardon. Research using neuroimaging technology demonstrates that subjects who report having suppressed or decided to let go of resentment without genuinely resolving the underlying pattern show continued amygdala reactivity when exposed to stimuli associated with the offending person or event. The threat detection circuitry continues to fire. The cortisol response continues. The pro-inflammatory chemistry continues. The suppression has changed the behavior. The person may no longer express the resentment overtly, but the pattern is still running, and the body's biochemistry is still accurately reporting its activity. By contrast, subjects who have undergone genuine forgiveness interventions show a measurably different neuroimaging profile. Reduced amygdala activation, reduced cortisol response, and a perceptual shift in which the memory of the offense is processed through neural circuits associated with neutral historical information rather than present threat. The memory has become, in the precise language of the neuroscientist, decontextualized from its threat valence. The account is closed. The balance is zero. The science and the metaphysics are in complete agreement. The implications of this convergence for the practical application of the severance protocol cannot be overstated. You are not being asked, in executing the cancellation decree, to perform an act of faith in a metaphysical model that cannot be tested or verified. You are being invited to perform an act that the empirical sciences have now confirmed will produce specific, measurable, beneficial changes in your neurological function, your immune function, your cognitive capacity, your cardiovascular health, and your subjective quality of life. The mechanism by which these changes occur, the deactivation of the amygdala's chronic threat loop, the normalization of cortisol production, the restoration of prefrontal cortical function, is precisely the biological expression of what Fox described as the dissolution of the energetic tether and the restoration of the creative medium to its natural state of clarity and openness. The law is operating at every level of your being simultaneously. The metaphysical instruction to execute the decree and the physiological instruction to reduce your chronic stress load are not two different instructions. They are the same instruction, described in two different languages, producing the same result. The relationship between the forgiveness state and what Fox called the magnetic force of the cleared consciousness now has a partial neurobiological description. When the amygdala's chronic activation is relieved and cortisol levels normalize, the prefrontal cortex is restored to full functional capacity. This is the brain region responsible for what neuroscientists call executive function, the highest order cognitive processes of the human brain, including pattern recognition, creative synthesis, long-range planning, social attunement, and intuitive decision-making. These are precisely the capacities that generate the quality of perception and action, from which new opportunities arise, new relationships form, and new creative solutions to old problems emerge. Fox described the cleared consciousness as one that suddenly recognizes opportunities it could not previously see, that receives creative impulses that were previously blocked, that attracts with magnetic force the people and circumstances corresponding to its highest blueprint. The neuroscientist describes the restored prefrontal cortex as one that demonstrates improved pattern recognition, enhanced creative cognition, heightened social attunement, and more accurate intuitive judgment. They are describing, again, the same event. The window has been cleaned. The light can now come through. There is a dimension of the neurobiological story that is particularly relevant to the reverse bridge, to the connection between Fox's teaching and the modern person's experience of specific, contemporary forms of suffering. Anxiety, which is one of the most prevalent conditions of 21st century life, has a direct and well-documented relationship to the amygdala's chronic activation state. The person living with unresolved resentment or guilt is living with a continuously overactivated threat detection system, a nervous system that has been tuned to high alert by the chronic rehearsal of old wounds and cannot easily return to baseline even in the absence of any immediate external threat. This is experienced as free-floating anxiety, a pervasive sense of unease, threat, and urgency that seems disproportionate to or unconnected from the actual circumstances of the present moment. The person experiencing this anxiety may seek its explanation in the external conditions of their life, in their financial situation, their relationships, their career, without recognizing that its actual source is internal, neurological, and directly traceable to the open circuit of an unresolved energetic contract. Execute the decree. Deactivate the loop. The anxiety does not merely diminish, its biological source is removed. The nervous system can return to baseline. The present moment can be experienced as genuinely safe for the first time in years. The connection between chronic unresolved resentment and depressive symptomatology follows a similar neurobiological pathway, though through a different primary mechanism. The chronic elevation of cortisol associated with unresolved grievance suppresses the production and availability of serotonin, the neurotransmitter whose adequate presence is most closely associated with the baseline sense of well-being, meaning, and emotional stability. The person who is living with the weight of years of unresolved resentment or guilt is at the neurochemical level, operating in a condition of induced serotonin deficiency, not because of any structural fault in their neurobiology, but because the chemistry of their own unresolved pattern is actively suppressing the production of the chemistry of their own well-being. The medical community treats this condition with pharmacological intervention designed to restore serotonin availability. Fox's intervention addresses the actual source. Dissolve the pattern that is generating the cortisol. The cortisol drops, the serotonin rises. The baseline sense of well-being returns, not as a side effect of the forgiveness, but as its direct neurochemical consequence. The law operates all the way down to the molecular level. It does not miss a single detail. The immune system research is perhaps the most striking confirmation of Fox's metaphysical model for an audience accustomed to thinking about the consequences of resentment in terms of emotional suffering rather than physical health. The research field of psychoneuroimmunology, the study of the relationship between psychological states and immune function, has established with high confidence that chronic stress, including the specific stress produced by unresolved resentment and guilt, measurably suppresses the function of natural killer cells, which are among the immune system's primary defenses against both infection and abnormal cellular proliferation. The chronic cortisol elevation of the unresolved grievance is not merely making you anxious, it is not merely dulling your creativity, It is measurably compromising your body's ability to defend itself against illness at the cellular level. Fox's teaching that resentment and guilt drain your energy was not speaking only of psychological energy. The drain is biological, cellular, and immunological. The cancellation decree is, among its many other functions, a precise and evidence-supported intervention for the restoration of immune competence. The convergence between Fox's metaphysical model and the contemporary science of forgiveness becomes perhaps most striking when examined through the lens of what researchers call the reframing effect of genuine forgiveness. When a subject genuinely forgives a transgressor, when the neurological profile shifts from threat-activated to neutrally archival, researchers observe not merely a reduction in negative affect, but a measurable increase in what psychologists call benefit finding, the capacity to recognize constructive meaning, personal growth, or unexpected positive consequence that emerged from the challenging experience. This is precisely what Fox described as the consequence of a genuinely cleared consciousness. The freed-up creative intelligence, no longer consumed by the grievance, is able to survey the landscape of the experience and identify what the experience made possible, what strength it developed, what knowledge it provided, what trajectory it ultimately enabled. The experience does not become something that happened to you. It becomes something that happened for you. Not because suffering is inherently redemptive, but because a consciousness freed from the resentment of the suffering is neurologically positioned to perceive the landscape of the experience with an accuracy and a generativity that the resentment-clouded consciousness was completely incapable of. The data was always there. The forgiveness cleared the lens. And what the clear lens reveals is not damage, it is architecture. Finally, the neuroscience of compassion and self-compassion provides the scientific context for what Fox described as the self-directed application of the cancellation decree, the forgiveness of the self, the release of guilt and self-condemnation. Research demonstrates that self-compassion, which the scientific literature defines not as self-indulgence, but as the application to oneself of the same quality of understanding and release that one would extend to another in similar circumstances, is associated with all of the same neurological and physiological benefits as the forgiveness of others, and in many studies shows even stronger correlations with improved mental health, reduced anxiety and depression, increased creative capacity, and greater resilience in the face of subsequent challenges. The arrogance of guilt that Fox identified, the conviction that one's sin is too severe for the decree's application, is not only metaphysically mistaken, it is neurobiologically self-destructive. Maintaining it does not honor the people your mistakes may have harmed, it simply adds your own biochemical damage to theirs. Drop the guilt. Not because what you did didn't matter, because maintaining the guilt is serving no one, and releasing it serves everyone, beginning with you, whose freed creativity and restored capacity are the only tools you have with which to make anything right. Now let us observe these principles at work in the concrete particulars of a specific life. Because while the law operates in the abstract with mathematical certainty, it is in the specific texture of a human story that its operation becomes fully legible. Consider the case of a businesswoman, let us call her a thinker of considerable capacity and ambition, who built, over the course of 7 years of focused effort, creative energy, and personal sacrifice, a thriving company in the consulting sector. She built it from nothing, through the force of her intelligence, her vision, and her willingness to outwork every obstacle the market placed before her. And at the height of this building, when the structure she had erected with such precision was at its most impressive and its most promising, she was betrayed by the person she had trusted most. A business partner of 4 years, to whom she had delegated the company's financial management with complete trust, had been systematically embezzling funds for 2 of those years. The discovery was not merely a financial shock, it was a shattering of the most fundamental assumptions she had made about reality, about the reliability of trust, about her own judgment, about whether the world she had been building was solid ground or an elaborate deception. She did what any person of her intelligence and resources would do. She hired lawyers. She initiated litigation. She pursued every legal avenue available to her, for the recovery of the stolen funds and the accountability of the partner who had stolen them. These were reasonable, proportionate, and legally appropriate actions, and they consumed the next 2 years of her life with nearly total thoroughness. But alongside the litigation, intertwined with it, feeding it, sustained by it, there grew in her consciousness something that was not a legal strategy. It was a consuming resentment, an obsessive hatred, a continuous mental replaying of the betrayal that occupied her inner life with an intensity that left almost no room for anything else. She rehearsed the offense in intimate detail multiple times daily. She spoke of it to everyone who would listen. She made it the central organizing principle of her narrative about herself and her life. She was the person who had been devastatingly betrayed, and every new circumstance was filtered through that organizing identity. The predictable and entirely lawful consequence was this: everything she tried to build during those 2 years failed. Not for lack of skill, not for lack of market opportunity, not for lack of the strategic intelligence that had built the first company. The skill was intact, the market was accessible, the intelligence was present, but the blueprint was corrupted. The operating system of her consciousness was running the program of betrayal, and the law, impersonal, precise, and unfailing, was delivering outputs that corresponded to that program. Every new business relationship she entered was processed through the filter of, "This person will betray me too," and this conviction, held with the force of her full creative belief, either selected for partners who were indeed unreliable or generated the specific quality of guardedness and suspicion in her own behavior that progressively eroded the trust of partners who might otherwise have been reliable. The resentment was not merely an emotion she was experiencing, it was an active blueprint she was transmitting, and the universal creative medium was building from that blueprint with perfect architectural accuracy. The moment of recognition came not as a dramatic revelation, but as a quiet, exhausted acknowledgement in the privacy of her own consciousness. Late at night, when the energy available for maintaining the litigation of the inner courtroom had finally been depleted past the point of sustainability, she recognized with the clarity that sometimes arrives only at the edge of complete depletion that she was not hating the partner. She was hating herself, with the partner's face used as the object on which the hatred was projected. She was maintaining, with the full force of her considerable intelligence and will, the single most damaging pattern that a thinker can hold, the conviction that the past has the power to determine the present, that what was done to her then was still being done to her now, and that the only honest response to this ongoing injury was ongoing outrage. She was, in Fox's precise language, serving a life sentence in a prison where the door was wide open. And the door had been open all along. She encountered Fox's teaching through a sequence of circumstances that felt, in retrospect, too precise to be accidental. Though in the metaphysical framework we have been establishing throughout this investigation, they were simply the law responding to the first genuine crack in the pattern of her resentment, delivering the specific tool that the crack had made it possible for her to receive. She read his formulation of the cancellation decree not as a spiritual suggestion, but as a precise technical instruction, and she approached it with the same analytical rigor she had applied to every business problem she had ever solved. She identified the account. She prepared the state of clinical detachment, which, for someone of her analytical disposition, came with relative ease once she understood the precise metaphysical function it served. She sat with the specific image of the partner in the focus of her mind, and she issued the decree. "I fully and freely forgive you. I loose you and let you go. The past is dead. The debt is cancelled. You are free, and I am free." She did not feel in that first moment a dramatic liberation. What she reported was something quieter and more fundamental, a cessation of motion. The continuous churning of the inner courtroom, the relentless prosecution that had been running at background level every hour of every day for 2 years, simply stopped. The session adjourned, not because she had decided to stop caring about what had happened, but because the decree had been issued with enough genuine authority to deactivate, at least partially, the program that had been sustaining the session. In the days that followed, she noticed the effects that we have now catalogued from both the metaphysical and the neurological perspectives. The memory of the betrayal surfaced, but with decreasing frequency and decreasing heat. The creative impulses that had been absent for 2 years began, tentatively at first, and then with increasing force to return. She found herself waking in the mornings with ideas rather than with rehearsals of the old offense. She found herself perceiving possibilities in the market that the previous year's congested consciousness had been completely blind to. Within weeks of the initial execution of the decree, which she repeated with increasing completeness and decreasing resistance over the course of those weeks, deepening the deletion with each iteration, she experienced what Fox would recognize as the natural consequence of a cleared operating system, the return of the full force of her creative intelligence to the present moment, unimpeded by the drain of the grievance. A new business idea emerged from a conversation she would never have had the presence of mind to engage with when the inner courtroom was still in session. The idea was not modest. It addressed a need in the market that the experience of her own betrayal, now depotentiated of its emotional charge, reclassified from an active wound to a data point, had uniquely positioned her to understand. Within a year of executing the decree, she had built a new company from that idea. Within 3 years, that company had revenues 10 times larger than the company that had been destroyed by the embezzlement. The wealth could only enter when the resentment was evicted. The law was not withholding the wealth. The resentment was blocking the door. Remove the blockage and the law delivers. It always delivers. It cannot do otherwise. It is a law. Everything we have established in this investigation, the metaphysics of the energetic tether, the precise mechanism of the cancellation decree, the neurobiological confirmation of the forgiveness effect, the concrete illustration of the liberated thinker reclaiming their creative authority, converges on a single principle that is, in the final analysis, the most fundamental teaching Emmet Fox ever articulated. It is not complicated. Its simplicity is, in fact, the measure of its depth. The holding of the past is the only mechanism by which the future can be prevented. Not external circumstance, not the economy, not the actions of other people, not the absence of opportunity or talent or luck. The past, held in consciousness as a living grievance or a living guilt, is the single most effective instrument of self-imprisonment available to the human thinker, and it is entirely self-administered. You built the prison. You are staffing it. You are funding it. You are the only person who has ever had the authority to close it. No circumstance external to your own consciousness has ever had the power to hold you there. And no circumstance external to your own consciousness is required to free you. The door is in your mind. The key is in your hand. It has always been there. The synthesis of this principle with the full architecture of the law produces a conclusion of staggering practical significance. If the past held in consciousness is the only mechanism of imprisonment, and if the cancellation decree is the precise, available, and universally applicable instrument for dissolving that hold, then the question of when you can begin to build the life that corresponds to your highest blueprint is not a question that is governed by time, by circumstance, by the state of the economy, by the behavior of other people, or by any factor whatsoever outside the quality of the pattern you are holding in your own consciousness. You can begin the moment you execute the decree with complete authority, not eventually. The moment the blueprint is cleared of the past's corrupting imprint, the law begins to build from the new pattern immediately, because the law has no mechanism for delay. It responds to the present moment quality of the consciousness it is serving. Change the consciousness. The construction begins. It is as simple and as absolute as that. Fox's synthesis rested on an understanding of the infinite creative medium, the universal substance through which all conditions are formed, as an entity of absolute and unconditional availability. This substance is not rationing its generosity based on your history. It is not consulting the record of your past mistakes before deciding how much good to allow into your experience. It has no such record. It has no memory of its own. It operates entirely from the present moment quality of the pattern it receives from the thinker who is working within it. A thinker operating from a cleared consciousness, projecting a clean blueprint, receives from this infinite substance the unconditional, unrationed, unlimited response that corresponds to that blueprint. The substance is not the variable. The thinker's pattern is the variable. Clean the pattern. The substance delivers. The fullness of what the infinite has always been available to give you has not diminished by a single unit during all the years your pattern was too corrupted to receive it. It is all still there. It is all still available. It is waiting for a clear instruction from a cleared thinker. Give it the instruction. The convergence of the metaphysical principle, the neurobiological mechanism, and the concrete human story we have examined establishes with a degree of coherence that transcends any single field of knowledge, a unified and actionable understanding of the most powerful tool in the thinker's possession. The cancellation decree is not a spiritual practice for the spiritually inclined. It is not a therapy for the emotionally damaged. It is not an inspirational exercise for those who enjoy personal development. It is the fundamental maintenance operation of the human consciousness, the essential systems administration act that every thinker must perform regularly, rigorously, and without mercy on the ego's desire to preserve its grievances, if that consciousness is to function at the level of clarity and magnetic force that the law makes available to it. Neglect this maintenance, and the system degrades. Perform it with precision, and the system operates at the level of its design. The design is extraordinary. The design is your birthright. Claim it. The final synthesis point concerns the relationship between the cancellation decree and what Fox called the forward motion of the soul. Every genuine act of forgiveness, every complete and authoritative execution of the decree is not merely a clearing of the past. It is a forward declaration of the future. By issuing the decree, you are not only removing the pattern of the old wound from your blueprint, you are asserting, by the very act of the removal, your identity as a thinker who is not bound by the past, who is not defined by what was done to or by them, who operates from the understanding that the present moment is always and entirely clean, and that the future is always and entirely open. This assertion is itself a blueprint. It is the blueprint of freedom, of creative authority, of the kind of thinker who inhabits the forward edge of their own life rather than the archive of its history. The law responds to this blueprint with the same precision and fidelity with which it responds to every other. Decree that you are free, and the law will build the architecture of your freedom, not around you, within you first, and then, because effect must always follow cause, in every dimension of the world you inhabit. You are standing at a threshold that every human being eventually reaches, though most reach it without recognizing what it is or what it asks of them. It is the threshold between the archive and the present, between the life that is being lived as the managed aftermath of a past that ended years ago, and the life that is being lived as the forward-moving expression of a thinker who has reclaimed the full authority of their own consciousness. On one side of this threshold is every grievance you have ever catalogued, every failure you have ever archived, every wound you have ever enshrined in the memorial of your own self-narrative. On the other side is the clean, open, unmarked territory of a present moment that has never held anything against you, a universal law that has never stopped being ready to serve your highest blueprint, and an infinite supply that has been waiting with complete patience for the moment your cleared consciousness would become capable of receiving it. The cancellation decree is the act of crossing the threshold. It is not a small act. It is the act of your life. Tear up the old contracts. This is not a metaphor offered for its emotional resonance. It is a precise instruction for the thinker who understands the nature of the energetic contracts that old resentments and old guilts represent. The contracts that bind you to past versions of yourself and past versions of others are not natural features of the landscape of your life. They are agreements, maintained by your continuous attention, renewed by your habitual rehearsal, and sustained by the ego's conviction that to release them would be to betray either your own suffering or the seriousness of your past mistakes. None of this is true. The contracts serve nothing but the limitation they produce, and they can be torn up at any moment, definitively, completely, and without the requirement of anyone's permission, by the exercise of the thinker's authority over the pattern of their own consciousness. Tear them up, every last one. The past is not owed this investment of your present. You are. Burn the ledgers of your past mistakes. The ledger is the mental record of everything you owe and everything you are owed, the running account of debts incurred and wounds sustained that the ego consults daily as evidence of its position in the world. The ledger says, you failed here, and the consequence is a permanent reduction in your deserving. You were wrong there, and the consequence is a permanent vigilance against the repetition. The ledger is the instrument of limitation, and it is maintained entirely by your own hand. You wrote every entry. You update it every time you rehearse the failure or replay the wound. You have the complete authority to close it, to take it to the fire, and to watch its entries become ash. A thinker with a burned ledger is not a thinker who has forgotten their history. They are a thinker who has reclassified their history from a governing document to an inert record, from a law by which the present is judged to a data set from which the wise thinker extracts useful learning, and then, having extracted it, releases the rest to the fire. Burn it. Start the new account with a zero balance and a clean page. You are not a prisoner of your history. This is not an encouraging affirmation offered to make you feel better about a situation that is, in truth, impossible to escape. This is a precise metaphysical statement of fact. The past does not have the power to govern your present experience. It only appears to have this power because you are, at this moment, granting it this power by means of your continuous attention to it, your emotional investment in it, and your acceptance of it as a determinative force in your life. Withdraw the attention, withdraw the investment, refuse the acceptance, and the power dissolves instantly, not gradually, not eventually, but now, because it was never the past's power. It was always yours, temporarily lent to an old account that was no longer generating returns. Take the power back, it is yours, it has always been yours, unless you volunteer to be the jailer. This is the clause that Fox's teaching will not allow you to overlook, because it is the clause that locates the entire mechanism of your imprisonment, precisely and irrevocably where it has always been, in your own choice. No one else has ever been the jailer. The partner who betrayed you is not the jailer. The parent who wounded you is not the jailer. The circumstance that broke what you had built is not the jailer. You are, specifically, the version of you that picks up the keys every morning and locks the cell from the inside, mistaking the familiar weight of the keys for security and the familiar dimensions of the cell for home. This version of you is not your enemy. They are simply a version that has not yet understood what the keys are for. They are for opening the door. From the inside, right now, not when the circumstances are right, not when the other person has acknowledged they're wrong, not when you feel ready. The cell is locked from the inside, which means the cell is unlocked from the inside, and it is unlocked at precisely the moment you decide that remaining inside is no longer a price you are willing to pay. Issue the decree. This is not a suggestion for your consideration. This is an instruction based on a law that does not operate on the basis of your comfort with it. The law is operating right now in this moment, building from whatever blueprint you are currently holding. If the blueprint contains the corrupted pattern of an unresolved grievance, even one that you have decided is too important or too justified to release, the law is building from that pattern right now, with perfect accuracy and without a single deviation. It is not waiting for you to be ready. It is not pausing to give you time to gather your courage. It is executing. It is always executing. It can do nothing else. And every moment in which the blueprint remains corrupted is a moment in which the construction of your life is being built to the specification of that corruption. Issue the decree. Change the blueprint. The law will change the construction, immediately, automatically, and without any hesitation whatsoever. Unlock the cell. Walk out into the sun. The sun is not a metaphor. The sun is the life the law has been trying to build for you since the moment the old pattern began to block it. The moment you cross the threshold, the moment the decree is issued with full authority and the tether is genuinely severed, you will understand something that cannot be understood from inside the cell. The sun did not dim while you were inside. The universe did not reduce its offering while the grievance was blocking the door. The good that corresponds to your highest blueprint was not gradually depleted by the length of your imprisonment. It was waiting, in full measure, exactly as large and as bright as it has always been. for the cleared consciousness that could receive it. Every year of the grievance did not cost you a year's worth of good. It temporarily delayed the reception of a good that remains completely intact and completely available the moment the delay is removed. Walk out. The sun is exactly as bright as it was on the day the cell door first closed. It has been waiting. It does not know how to do anything else. The Clean Slate Challenge is not a ritual for sentiment. It is a practical, specific, and precisely calibrated application of the severance protocol to the concrete material of your actual life. A commitment, issued tonight before you sleep, to take the first definitive step across the threshold we have been examining. Here is the precise instruction. Tonight, when the house is quiet and the distractions of the day have receded far enough to allow the deeper attention that this work requires, sit at a table with a single sheet of paper and a pen. Identify, with complete honesty and complete specificity, the one name, the one event, the one past version of yourself that carries the heaviest charge in the archive of your unresolved resentment or guilt. Not a general category, a specific name, a specific failure, the account that has been opened the longest, the tether that has exerted the most consistent drain on your creative reserve. Write it on the paper. Write it clearly, in full, without softening or abbreviating the truth of what it represents. The writing is itself an act of identification, the first step of the severance protocol, the precise target identification that is the precondition of an effective decree. Then speak the decree out loud, not in a whisper, not with hesitation or apology, with the clear, deliberate, authoritative voice of a thinker who understands exactly what they are doing and exactly why. I fully and freely forgive you. I loose you and let you go. The past is dead. The debt is cancelled. You are free, and I am free. Speak each clause with awareness of its precise function. Feel the weight of fully closing the loophole. Feel the act of loosing as a physical gesture of release. Feel the finality of the past is dead, as the withdrawal of the life support of your attention from a pattern that had no life of its own. Feel the clean precision of the debt is cancelled as the stroke of the pen through the last entry on the ledger. And feel the bilateral declaration of you are free and I am free as the simultaneous opening of two cells, theirs and yours, with a single key that only you have ever held. Take the paper, tear it, not thoughtfully, not symbolically, not with the careful precision of someone preserving the fragments for later examination. Tear it with the deliberateness of a thinker who has decided that this record is no longer an active account and no longer deserves the integrity of a whole page. Tear it into pieces too small to be reassembled, because the account is not merely being suspended, it is being permanently closed, and the record of it is being reduced to fragments that carry no more information than confetti. Throw the pieces away, completely, entirely, and without the instinct to retrieve them. The physical act of the tearing and the disposal is the body's participation in the decree, the kinesthetic dimension of the release that writes the termination command into the neural and muscular memory of the act. The body will remember that it tore the paper. It will carry the memory of that decisive physical gesture forward, and the memory will reinforce at the somatic level the authority of the decree that generated it. Breathe out when the paper is gone. Breathe out slowly, completely, and with the full conscious intention of expelling the residual energy of the severed tether from your body. Then sit in the silence for a moment, in the space that the release has created. Do not immediately fill the silence with thoughts or plans or evaluations of whether you did it correctly. Simply inhabit the space. Notice whether there is a quality of difference in the inner landscape, a settling, a slight lightness, a subtle reduction in the ambient weight that has been present for so long that you have ceased to recognize it as weight. These are the first reports from a system that has processed the decree at the level of consciousness. Note them without analysis. They are the beginning of the evidence. The fuller evidence will come in the days that follow, as the freed creative energy of the cleared circuit begins to express itself in the renewed vitality of your ideas, the improved quality of your perception, and the gradually brightening architecture of the world your changed blueprint is beginning to build. This channel, Sacred Logic, exists for a single purpose, And that purpose is the one Fox articulated in every book he ever wrote, in every lecture he ever delivered, with a consistency of intention that never varied from the first page to the last. It is the purpose of making the law fully legible to every thinker who is willing to receive it, stripping away the accumulated layers of misinterpretation, sentiment, superstition, and cultural distortion that have concealed the clean mechanical precision of the universal principles from the people they were designed to serve. The law is not hidden from you. It is not reserved for the spiritually gifted, or the intellectually sophisticated, or the emotionally evolved. It operates for every thinker equally, without favoritism and without exception, with the same impersonal precision that gravity operates for every physical body on this planet. What varies is not the law's availability, but the thinker's understanding of it. And understanding, unlike luck, unlike circumstance, unlike the behavior of other people, is a variable that you can change. That is what this channel is for. Subscribe to Sacred Logic, not as a passive consumer of content, but as a thinker who has decided to master the laws that govern the construction of their own experience. Every investigation on this channel is an instrument of that mastery. A precise, thorough, technically rigorous examination of the principles that Fox and the science of mind tradition articulated, cross-referenced with the most current scientific understanding of consciousness, neurology, and the nature of the mind-reality interface. These are not inspirational videos, they are operational manuals. They are the blueprints of the blueprint. Subscribe, so that when the next investigation is published, you receive it immediately. As the working thinker you are, fully equipped with the understanding that this work requires and fully committed to applying it with the precision that the law rewards. The next principle is already waiting. The next mechanism is already prepared. The architecture of your mastery is under construction. Do not miss the next layer. Subscribe now. The work continues.